One way to help you hit a faster serve is to make sure that your leg drive timing is correct. Now, this video footage is courtesy of Court Level Tennis. Thank you so much, Liam Appilato, for allowing me to use this footage. Make sure you subscribe to their awesome channel. I've put their link in the description below. Taylor Fritz, big serve, and a good example of proper leg drive timing. So let's first understand the basics. You want to make sure that after you film your serve and you review the footage, which is what you should be doing, that you are at least bending your knees. Make sure that you are bending, and we can see Taylor here bend his knees, and then he explodes back up and actually lifts off the ground during that explosion. So once you make sure that you are bending your knees, then you got to make sure that you're doing it at the right time. So first, you want to make sure that after you release the ball is when you initially bend your knees. Right? You see a lot of recreational players, if they do bend their knees, especially beginners, they will bend way too early. So you want to think toss, bend. That is the proper timing for the initiation of knee bend. Toss, then bend. The next thing is to understand where the racket should be when you're at the deepest point in your knee bend. So let's zoom in here and let's look at the top of his head, right? So we're just looking right at the top of his head, and I'm looking for the moment when his knees are most bent, which is just when his head is at the lowest, which is going to be right about there. So we're going to draw a straight line across the top of his head. So that's when his knees are most bent, and then we can see him pop up. So now what we want to do, and by the way, you want to do this with your serve. So make sure you toss, then bend, and then make sure that you stop the video when your knees are the most bent, at your lowest point. Then you want to check to see where your racket is. Now, I'm going to draw a line where Fritz's racket is. Now, this actually happens to be where Riley Opelka has his racket at his lowest point. This is Grigor Dimitrov. Andy Roddick, right? So that is a well-known place and a well-documented place for the racket to be when the knees are most bent. But there's another place you can have it, and you can actually have it right here. This is where you see Roger Federer, Naomi Osaka. That is the trophy position when the knees are fully bent. So this is the range of acceptability on the serve. When you film yourself, check to see that when you are at your most bent with your knees, that your racket is either on the chest side of your body or straight above your head at the moment when you're knocking off the party hat. Where you do not want the racket to be is back here. You do not want the racket have already knocked off the birthday hat and now it's dropping behind you at the moment when you are at your deepest. And the reason is because it will not maximize the shoulder stretch. And I'll show you what I mean by the shoulder stretch. This is the shoulder stretch where the racket is getting pulled down, right? That's the racket drop because your elbow's coming forward and up and the shoulder housing stretches and everything pulls down. That's kind of like a slingshot or a catapult. And then boom, it snaps forward up and over your ham. The racket does, right? So what we want to do is make sure that when you are at your lowest point, that the racket is either in front of your chest, like it would be wrong to be down here, right? That would be too late in the motion. It's too late at that point to have proper timing. You either want to be slightly in front of you on the chest side or above you knocking off the birthday hat at that exact moment. Anywhere in there is the proper timing of the leg drive. Now, before I demonstrate this, I just want to remind you, if you're looking for new tennis players in your local area to compete against, practice with, or even find a coach who's close to you who's going to help you with your serve, then be sure to use my link in the description, and I'll also pin it in the first comment, playyourcourt.com/2minutetennis, and when you use my link, you get 50% off. All right, you want to use your legs, and you want to use them at the right time. So first, make sure when you film your serve and you review the footage that you're not bending your knees and then tossing the ball. That's what you see a lot of beginners do, and you want to, as a beginner or even as a seasoned player, you want to make sure you are not doing that. What it should be, and watch the pros, it's toss, then bend. So don't bend and toss, toss, and then bend. Now we have to make sure that when we bend, we explode up at the right time when it comes to where our racket is. There are two basic extremes which create the range of acceptability for where you want your racket to be in the service motion when you begin exploding up. Those two extremes are here and here. Here is around your chest, neck, face height, strings pointing down at that point, or the racket above your head in the classic trophy position, knock off the party hat, which is what I teach, the knock off the party hat moment. To give you some pros who use those two extremes. You look at Andy Roddick, his racket was here. You look at Grigor Dimitrov, Ivo Karlovic, we just saw Taylor Fritz. The body began exploding up when the racket was in front of their body, on the way to knocking off the birthday hat. You look at players who are up here above their head, John Isner, Roger Federer, myself, I'm not a pro, far from it, Naomi Osaka. These are players who the racket is above their head. This is the range of acceptability. You do not want to be outside of this range. This range maximizes the shoulder stretch. When your body explodes up as the racket's making this move, you get a big shoulder stretch, which is like pulling back a slingshot or pulling back a rubber band, and then it explodes. When you drive up as your racket is on its way to the birthday hat or at the birthday hat, it accentuates the shoulder stretch and the racket drop, and you get a tremendous amount of racket speed. The mistake I typically see when players are outside of that range is their rackets back here. You see even high-level players doing this, where they will toss the ball, they'll begin bending the knees, but their racket goes upside down, and their racket's completely upside down when they begin exploding up. You are simply not going to maximize the weight of the racket going down as your shoulder and elbow are coming up, which is what is leading to that great shoulder stretch, maximizing your racket speed. So go out and film yourself. Make sure when you review the footage of your serve, don't just think about what you do. Film yourself and look at what you're doing on your phone. Toss and bend. And then make sure when you explode up, where your racket is. Is your racket back here? Don't do that. Have it either knocking off the birthday hat or just before knocking off the birthday hat when your legs begin exploding up. You use this leg drive timing and there's no doubt you're going to gain confidence, win more matches, and play much better tennis. This is Ryan Reedy from 2minutetennis.net. You got this.